this is the Birds of a Feather session on standards for improved, say, accessibility and interpretability of figures or visualizations in our packages, and I guess consequently the work that we publish. So I have, as of now, as in just me, Simone, and Dan are unmuted. And if anyone has views on basically these topics, please feel free to comment on the website, and we can unmute you and add you to the discussion panel, as in depending on what's the number of participants right now.
Looks like over 80.
Okay, so probably not great to have everyone unmuted, but yeah, if you have thoughts or more perspectives on this topic, feel free to just let us know, and we can introduce you into the panel, and then we can have a discussion. So yeah, my idea was to have a more organic discussion, as in instead of just having a talk where basically I would keep talking and everyone just listens without brainstorming or anything like that. So the slides here are just cues, I suppose, and Dan and I could probably present our perspectives on the issues that we are talking about. But in general, as in if people have any comments or any questions, they can post it on the web page, and Simone can help us navigate through those. So yeah,
sorry, Atul, I'm sorry. There is also the Google Doc, right?
Yeah, there's also, yeah. I've also shared a Google Doc on the web page, basically in the chat. And if, so my ideas for the Google Doc were basically, if people, for each of the questions, or basically the top subtopics that we have, if people had any ideas or if they had any questions, they could just post them there, as in we could answer them either in time, or I could populate or basically answer them after the fact, as in after the session ends. And even if, let's say, you had any of your own figures in public domain, which let's say you wanted to, if you think that, okay, this is the best that can be done in terms of interpretability or accessibility for that figure, or if you have no idea how to, say, improve it to make it accessible to as many people as possible, you could just maybe post that figure there, and people could brainstorm on how that could be made more accessible. As in, I guess, so I am myself colorblind, and so I can give you the perspective of someone who is more green colorblind, I suppose. And I don't know if Dan, do you want to say something about?
Yeah, I'm colorblind as well. I guess I'm more red colorblind based on the image on the right of the screen now. Well, we're in presenter view, but
and
yeah.
That's not the only spectrum of colorblindness. There's also, as in, I know there's blue and yellow colorblindness.
Yep.
Which, as in, funnily to me, as in, since I'm red-green, it seems incredible to me that someone cannot distinguish blue and yellow, but I guess that's probably what a lot of people think about red and green as well. So
yeah, and there's also monochromatic and different shades of all of these. Like, I'm not super red-green colorblind, although I guess I can't see the bar at the top of this image at all. So maybe it is more than I think.
Yeah.
But
so yeah, the point basically was that there are, okay, first of all, a lot of our papers, our communication, our packages, everything, they are increasingly dependent on visualizations. As in, any paper you go to, as in Nature, Science, Cell, you would have 6 figures, as in page-wide figures, and having multiple panels, and each of them having multiple colors. And so the onus on visualization to communicate our results, and within that specifically color to communicate our results is increasing exponentially maybe. And yeah, so the point was that there, as in both visualizations in general and color in particular, are becoming extremely important for communicating our results. And in a lot of cases, the wrong choice of colors could leave a substantial percentage of the population who are colorblind kind of at a loss in terms of, especially since a lot of the results are about new, say, perspectives on the data. A lot of people could be left out in terms of what we are trying to communicate here, what we are interpreting from the figures. Just motivate that basically, as in, I've just provided two figures here. The left one is called the Ishihara test, which is basically the common color blindness test. So the entire objective of this test is to try to see if an individual can identify patterns within such a point process, or basically this circle. So normal vision people can very clearly see 74 in this, as I've been told by Wikipedia. And so people who have red-green color blindness either do not see any pattern at all,
like
or in my case, I see more of an 81. Wikipedia says it's more of a 21. I think Dan says that he doesn't see anything at all. So just to give you another example of basically, I guess, a more intelligent way of doing this. So the figure on the right is basically designed in such a way that I see the first line, which says you have normal red vision. I see everything in, I hope you can see my pointer here. So I see everything that's in this, which says you are not red blind. But here, I see you are green blind. And I do not, I know that, as in based on discussions on Reddit, I know that there is a second line here, and there's supposed to be a not here. And I believe Dan sees exactly the complement of what I am seeing. Where
so I can just describe it. I see nothing on top, and then I see your green vision is correct in like a fainter, different color down below your top box. And then in the you said not red blind, I don't see the not. And then on the right, where you have circled you are green blind, you can see this. I imagine other people might, but I then see a not after the R.
You do see a not, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the point being that colorblind people can either completely miss patterns or even misinterpret patterns based on what colors are chosen. And even when I was listening to a few talks today, there were basically plots with, say, 5 colors, of which I could distinctly identify 3. So if you have basically a legend with 5 different points, and I as a colorblind person can only see 3 of them distinctly. And then let's say if you have a scatter plot with a lot of points with multiple colors, it's really hard for colorblind people to actually interpret what's going on in the figure. So that was anyway limited only to the colorblind specific problems. I was, as in the second bit of that is that basically the onus on, or rather the focus on visualizations to communicate our results leaves out individuals with even more serious visual impairments. So we know that in, say, the field of GIS and everything, people have a lot of other strategies to try and bridge this gap, where they use alternative texts for their figures, where they explain what's happening in the figure, as in they narrate the figure in a sense. And that is screen reader friendly. So even if, let's say, someone is completely blind, they could ideally just have the screen read to them what's to be expected in the figure. So even though they might not be able to see it, they might be able to map it in the way that they're used to based on the narrator on the screen reader. So yeah, that's the, I guess, motivation for this session. So the next slide is what is ideally, as in what would we like the outcome of this session to be, or at least get the ball rolling in the sense that, so as in that we come up with standards that maximize the accessibility and interpretability of visualizations. So why do I say standards and not just make things available as an option? For example, Dan has a very good package called DittoSeek, which uses colorblind friendly visualizations. And so I have started using that in my own research, as in whenever I'm trying to do analysis, I'm trying to use that in my work to, as in quickly understand what's happening with my data. But when something is out there that is published, I have no way of correcting the choices of colors. And I have to, and I guess not just I, as in I'm speaking from my perspective, but any colorblind person is stuck with what's published in the PDF or on the website. And they would have to use some kind of screen filters or something which might work, but not necessarily, it's not necessarily ideal. And so yeah, my idea was that basically if every package does, or let's say if a package does not have accessible visualizations as a standard, then anyone who's using that package their first thought might not be to figure out how to make the visualizations more accessible, but they would just use it as is and publish the results. And it's basically more so if they are not as savvy in ggplot or any of the, I myself am not really. So,
and even if you are, a lot of people don't necessarily know the color panels that are usable. And yeah, there's plenty of things that I built into the package I made DittoSeek, which the reason that the package exists was that I could not use the visualizations that were available to me. So I started making functions, and then I started hoping to share them with my lab and then with other people, and then it became a package. But my perspective on this, if I can just add to it, is that if we can have standards that people build into their packages, into their default settings, then we encourage people to publish figures that are more accessible. And then people like Atul and I wouldn't have to ask our lab mates or find other ways to figure out what's going on in the data that is published, or in presentations where I've had to bother people next to me numerous times just to be like, what am I missing?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if my lab mates are around in this call, but they would, yeah, I've basically been trying to be more vocal in my own lab about
yeah, same.
Right. And yeah, as in the second one being on a broader level, just as a community, can we, include screen reader friendly, either accessibility captions or alternative texts, which can guide the reader through the visualization. For example, if I'm seeing something and if, let's say, the caption itself says that, okay, this is the inference from this particular figure. So even if I'm not able to necessarily see the colors or see the pattern, if the author could say that, okay, this is the pattern of this particular color, and based on that, this is the inference that we are making. That is quite informative, as in where basically it's more interpretable to us or anyone, as in people who have other visual or other vision impairments, to just read the thought process of the author as opposed to trying to interpret just based on the colors and the figures what exactly is happening there. So yeah, in terms of how one could go about it, I guess one is, in general, I suppose we could think of increasing the interpretability of figures, and not just with respect to colorblind friendly strategies, but with respect to just even for normal vision people. So as in, one of my collaborators mentioned an interesting point that basically if a figure cannot be explained in 1 or 2 sentences, then maybe it's already too complicated. So can we strive to do that, and can we strive to make sure that each panel that we are including is somehow simple enough where it's not using multitudes of colors? And so yeah, just to make a point, I think there was one plot I saw today which had something like 20 different colors. And even if, let's say, you use a colorblind friendly palette, beyond say 7 or 8, it gets probably impossible for people to figure out what's happening. I'm not sure how much of a problem that is for normal vision people. So
I've heard that beyond like 15, even from my like color vision normal, I can't remember. One of my friends has a a way of referring to that I love, but I can't think of it right now. But I've heard that beyond 15, it's hard for everyone. But yeah, beyond 8, the color panel that Atul has in his slide here from DittoSeek, it's it's an extension of the Okabe Ito panel. I'm giving a talk tomorrow, so I can just jump to my color blindness slides from the package if we want to go through some ideas that I have there. If you want to stop sharing, I can share.
Sure, I could do that. Yep, that's perfect.
So for DittoSeek, I took, this is, I should have the citation here, I'll add it tomorrow, but this is a color panel that is built to look almost the same to people with the 2 most common forms of color blindness, which are both red-green. But I then extended it to 40 colors via lighter and darker repeats, but they're still not perfect. So some other things that I built into DittoSeek to still try and help are increasing the legend symbols, because for me, even if the colors aren't like super distinguishable, if I can at least get like a sense of this one is darker than that one, like it can help me pick out which is which, as well as adding labels, or for the package itself, I built in allowing you to like use a letter overlay where you literally have A, B, C, D, E, and so on over the dots of each different group. I think that's something that might never go into publications, but at least when people are working with the data, or if you have your code shared so that people can easily recreate your figures, someone would be able to use that. Or using shapes instead of colors, or even faceting. So you just show, maybe even just have 5 groups per panel, but then have 10 different panels if you actually need to have 25 different groups or something like that. And then I guess I built in a simulation function into my package, but that's not sort of helpful here. So that's sort of, those are the features that I built into DittoSeek that I think we could maybe try and build into other packages, just to give a few other ideas.
Thanks, Dan. So yeah, as in the already existing color friendly palettes that I know of, as in this is not an exhaustive list, as you can see, DittoSeek and I think Vidiris. And then, as Dan already mentioned, we could, if let's say your scatter plot has few points which are sparsely or spaced out in the plot, then you could probably try to distinguish. So the point is that if instead of having color as the only distinguishing factor between different cell types or different data types, we could have color and another say feature of the visual feature, where basically you could have, instead of red dots, blue dots, green dots, and so on, you could have red squares, blue circles, green triangles, and so on. So even if, let's say, someone cannot distinguish between red and green, they can still say it's red circles and green triangles. I guess another point that I would like to make is perhaps some misconception of red-green color blindness is that people can not identify only between red and green. That is not the case. It's basically a lot of colors where either red or green could be a component of a more complex color, I believe. So, for example, in my case, teal and a dull blue look similar to me unless I'm wearing my color blindness glasses, so which I cannot wear indoors. So it's not just between red and green, but it's basically a range of colors that there could be a problem with. But in general, what I'm trying to tell here is that in addition to color, you could use point shapes if there are fewer points. If, let's say, the points are densely clustered with each other to basically look like an area, you could have patterns or textures within the area. So you could have hatched plots, for example, of different colors. And I think Dan also mentioned faceting, which I think is a beautiful idea, where basically, let's say you have 3 or 4, let's say even if you wanted to show a Disney with 20 different cell types, you could try to limit it to 3 to 4, say, functional subtypes that you want to make a point about, choose contrasting colors for them, gray out every other cell that you're not interested in showing in that panel, and then show just those 4 cell types in that panel, and then move on to the next 4, and so on. And this doesn't even need to be like in the main figures of the paper. These could as well be, it could be part of the supplementary information, maybe as an eventually, I guess, we could convince the journals to have an accessibility supplementary PDF or something where all of this could be present in the supplement, but not necessarily in the main paper. If it is in the main paper, well and good, I would welcome it. But as in, if, let's say that, as in one thing I can, which was kind of my view, but after seeing Dan's DittoSeek package, probably it's not true, is that I always thought that the functionality of visualizations and how pretty it looks, there's a compromise between them. But as in looking at the figures that DittoSeek can
Thank you.
and I was really impressed that I could both understand, see all the patterns that he's trying to show in that figure, and they still looked really pretty. So yeah, I guess the excuse of me not being artistic is not down to color blindness. So there are more factors to that.
I would add that I think if we can just get more packages to be color blindness friendly by default, then, or as more and more color blindness friendly, I should say, then these issues are less and less a factor. And I think it might be really hard to get people to sign on board to like actually adding, I think you called it alt text, basically like giving full descriptions of the plots. But if we can at least get people's initial plots themselves to be better for us, then it's less of an issue.
Yeah, definitely. As in, that is, while that is true, I do not want this to, just because the two of us are colorblind, I do not want this to be a colorblind specific session. I wanted to address other things which might not be addressed using these strategies. So I guess text
That's valid.
is the go-to way people have tried to do it in the, the GIS, the weather prediction, because they have to cater to the entire population sometimes, and they always try to have I guess some text which can just be read out by your MacBooks and your Windows machines and so on.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any examples of what you would like to see? And because I mean, I would like to do this, but I don't know how do I do this to embed something that would be available for a screen reader, or the example of showing a plot and then giving the description of, I mean, I imagine in some ways it might be like what you would do if you're giving a talk and you start, then you talk about the axes and you say, you point to this thing here, you just have to write that out. But it could
Correct.
be useful if we had examples somewhere.
Yeah, so as in that's something that is as in personally still in the works in the lab that I'm working on, but I can definitely give examples, or as in there's a video where basically, so I guess the point being that it's been extensively done in the GIS field. So they even explain for as in complex maps what, let's say, what's happening in the figure, and so they can both annotate different points on the maps as well as just provide a general description of the map. So I can definitely share that either in the Google Doc or in the chat once I guess get done with the talking part of this. And but yeah, that's basically a video where, as in, it's an hour-long video where they explain how to do it, or rather, what kind of strategies work. But of course, in the in the field of GIS. So for each of these, so if you're asking about how can we add this information to figures, so in that case, it's basically you could, I think Acrobat has basically a function where you can right click on figures that you have in the document and you can add alt text to that. And even Word has it, and even I believe LaTeX has some packages where you can enable or rather add alt text to the images itself. So it's not visible in the text itself, but it's basically screen reader friendly. And so each figure will have, apart from your general caption, it would also have an alternative text which will be read by screen readers.
Okay. And I have one other question as far as you say you're trying to get all packages to have these better colors by default. Where do the general colors come from? Like, have you tried to approach the ggplot people to see if they will switch? Because then if that's the basis of everything, then it would maybe trickle down into all the other packages automatically.
Right, as in that is definitely that, as in we haven't done that yet, as in I guess I just pulled it down 3 minutes beyond the panel, so he's definitely
sort of to get towards that. I have been asked if I can make the color panel that I made for DittoSeek into like a scale so that it could be put into like the what is it, scale color manual or any of those. And I don't know how, but I would love to allow that to happen. And then I think if that color panel could be could replace the current default rainbow, that would be awesome. I think that would do a lot. Yeah, that's a great
because yes, as even a what would they call it, a color normative visual person, that I with the single cell data, once you get 15, 20, 24 clusters, I can't even tell them. Even when they only have a few, I can't tell them apart because they pick colors that are so close to each other.
right.
Yeah. If I can just, I'm giving a talk on DittoSeek tomorrow. It is for RNA-seq, like bulk and single cell. So it's at 11, just for anyone who's interested in this specifically for that data, that type of data.
All right, great, thank you.
So yeah, one point that I would like to make, and there have been discussions about how to say handle, say a figure where you might, there's no other way but for you to show 20 clusters, all with their own as in color, and which is probably inaccessible even to, or rather not interpretable even to normal vision people as opposed to colorblind people. So one thing I would, as in my personal opinion on that basically is the legends being on one side of the figure do not really do much for me, where basically even if let's say I have 8 colors, if let's say they're all high contrast, colorblind friendly, then maybe yes. But otherwise, if let's say some figure has 8 colors on the side where the legend shows the colors, and then by the time I pan to the figure itself, I'm kind of lost as to, okay, which of the legend elements belong to which clusters. So instead of that, if the labelings of the clusters could be done in place, basically, I don't even care if the same 5 colors are used as long as they are separated in space and the labels of the clusters are in place. Where basically you could have.
I think we've been playing a lot with, you know, the different visualizations, and if you look at even like some of the Seurat visualizations and you think you have a cluster, when you facet out, you realize you don't have a cluster because they vary the size and the scale a little bit, so that you don't see those outliers that are actually hanging around inside another cluster. And it looks like the figures are created such that they look like you've got this lovely, lovely cluster, but then when you facet out by clusters, the points are all over the space. So even without considering this as being important, I think for colorblind people, actually just for QCing your clusters, faceting out, I think, is critical, or at least drawing ellipses around the clusters so you can see the extent of the outliers within the clusters.
Right, that's true. As in, I guess, I think that was another point that was raised in one of the discussions that I was part of, where basically the question was, how do we even know if, let's say, the things that we are seeing are actually, as in not just one point over another, as opposed to there being 2 distinct clusters, or the cluster boundaries being in the place where we are actually seeing it in the final figure. So yeah, thanks, Aiden. That's a really good point. So yeah, I guess
I've got examples of that if you want at some point in time.
Sure. Yeah, I was wondering if you wanted to include that in the Google document, or anything that is, let's say, more public, or if there was.
Where's the link to the Google document? Have you linked it from the files in the chat, or how can I get it?
It's in the chat.
It's the second message in the chat, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's after yours, yeah.
I'll say, I mean, I don't want to keep plugging DittoSeek, but I built ellipses, and the colors of DittoSeek aren't like cluster 0, 1, 2 are not colors that are like similar to each other. So I think a lot of the concerns that were just raised, again, we're not trying to be focused on the one type of data or anything, but these are, yeah, check out DittoSeek.
Yeah, these are basically our thoughts based on the kinds of figures that we have encountered, and it might not necessarily answer every question. So for example, what I know of, let's say, if we are trying to create heat maps, as in there's no reason to use a rainbow palette for doing a heat map, where basically it's not necessarily giving you any more information, as opposed to either just doing a monochromatic or 2-tone heat map where you just go from one color to another. And basically if it goes all the way from blue to yellow to red, then basically trying to decode the relative wavelengths of the figures more consciously becomes a bit of a chore. So as in there are a lot of blogs online about what the easiest way to, or let's say the most efficient way to do a heat map is, and so on. So I would definitely share that with in the document.
There
So
was also, there was a blog that was shared, I can't remember by who, but in one of our discussions in the Bio Slack general about this. I'll try and find it and add that as well. It was really good and went through a lot of different panels and a lot of detail about making things more colorblind friendly.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, the last kind of question would be, who should, as in the onus be on, or who should opt into this, or at what level should we do this? Should this be something that's just voluntarily done by package developers or package owners, or should this be some kind of a recommendation coming from Bioconductor saying that this is what we would like the default to be, or could it be more of a even a requirement? I don't know, as in I'm not very privy to the Bioconductor process. So if someone from that perspective wanted to speak to it, or even as an, I think the question even is, do we need to bring journals into the loop? And I think someone mentioned that a lot of the times journals change your color scheme if they don't like it, or if I'm not sure how to answer that, but if that is something that needs to be as an addressed. So did anyone want to talk to that, or Dan, do you have any experience with, say, in the Bioconductor process where you
No, I think that there's been a discussion of adding some note about color blindness in the documentation on the Bioconductor website, but I wasn't largely part of that discussion. I think I was asked if I could help, but I'm not really sure that there's like I don't know if there's a way for us to enforce anything. I think it would end up being just like strong suggestions.
Right.
But I don't know if there's anyone here from sort of the core team, because I know there's another sort of meeting at the same time where most of them would be, unfortunately. But I think it might be something that we could work into the review process, but it would probably be for new packages. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Aideen, do you have any thoughts on this
Yeah, I was thinking this might be something that, at least like I'm not too sure how you would build it into our command check, which would be the process of getting it into a package. Or like enforcing it. The second part of it is somebody may have a function and there might be multiple palettes they're using. Some might be colorblind, some might be not. It might be difficult to enforce, and even if they do have functions that create those plots, in the vignette they may use something different. So I think it would be difficult to actually enforce, but I think it could be something that could be strongly suggested. But I think what might be a good thing to do, and I can definitely bring this up at the level of the community advisory board, and Dan, I know you've been like in communication with us about other stuff as well, whereby maybe it's a good thing to consider, at the level of supporting diversity within the project, and even writing some sort of review that we could actually try and get published in, a journal that has impact, such that it then is seen as something that people within the community should do. Sometimes it's good to actually point out to somebody, right, if this is something that you're trying to do, here's the resource. And that could even, whether that's like an OSCA-like book, or whether it's a review in a journal, or whether it's an F1000 workflow. I don't know what shape that should take, but possibly some sort of a resource that lists that the considerations that people should have, because even if you're red colorblind, you may not realize the difficulty somebody who's green colorblind, and you know, there's probably a lot there that I know I haven't considered properly.
Yeah, on like the panel that I have for DittoSeek is good for red-green color blindness, but it does not work for someone who is like blue-yellow colorblind. Unfortunately, there's not a good way.
Right, because even if, let's say, Dan and I were to sit together and come up with a color palette, it might be more usable for the red-green spectrum as opposed to everyone. So
I think this could be something that like we could put to the community advisory board, whether there wants to be some sort of a working group or a project to explore like what needs the community has. And maybe it's a case of just providing the code such that somebody can rerun it with a different palette, because it may not be possible to generate a figure that is compatible with everybody's vision.
Yeah, I think that's also where basically the alternative text or the descriptive caption might help, where as much as we try to improve the accessibility of the visualization itself, we might never be able to cover all the people through that, and having some kind of description of what's happening in the figure at the very least will provide an augmentation, will provide additional information as to what's happening in the figure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's worth. We've got how many people on the call here? We've got 86 people, to actually ask people to do a poll to see within this sample of Bioconductor community how many people are impacted, and ask people to do that now, and that might be data that can support these initiatives.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
And I think, you know, gathering the resources that different people have identified, and you know, definitely using DittoSeek as a template, but also maybe other things that other people find, and putting it together as a resource for people who are building visualization. And I think in the realm of Tisney and UMAP land, you know, color is such an important thing.
Yep. Is the poll accessible to people? And I'm not able to switch to the polls tab.
I might not be able
to
at this point either.
Actually, yes. So the poll is I mean, it's just next to the chat, and everyone can, you can start it and everyone can vote. Yeah.
Right. So I think, yeah, there's a good question there about crap. Anyway, so let me first add a poll to.
If people know of like computational platform approaches that something could go into an R command check, let us know as well. I don't know. Laurie might know something. I don't.
It's been hard for me alone, just even writing tests for DittoSeek, to like find ways of parsing whether the visualization adjustments are happening for my features. So I wonder if that would even, hopefully it's possible. I'm not really sure.
I attended a talk at the ODSC, the Open Data Science Conference, probably 3 years ago now in Boston. And it was a fabulous speaker, and she just had a Tisney plot, and I probably should put on my video. I'm probably being rude not doing it. Sorry, just realizing I'm probably being rude not having my video on. And she just showed a Tisney plot with however many clusters there was, and she just colored it by different colors. So one time a cluster was yellow and another time it was blue, and you know, it was just different clusters. And then she asked, how many clusters do you see? And it was shocking. And like me, who had played with Perplexity and Tisney until I was blue in the face, like knew the nuances of Tisney, and looking at it with different color schemes, your eyes trick you so much. It's absolutely, you know, it's that, you know, black, blue, white, gold dress thing. You see different clusters depending on the colors.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe we need a Tisney plot that's like the black, blue dress. Or you map.
I was unfortunately unable. I feel like those did not. I just kind of ignored the black blue dress because I was like, this. It doesn't even make sense to me. I imagine that might be how other people felt, but I was just like, I'm not even sure if I'm seeing this properly. So
I guess, yeah. So one question is also that, right? As in when, let's say if you are using colors to represent intensity of different things, or maybe even, let's say, if you're trying to plot a Disney map with different clusters, even if, say, 2 points have the same color, people like Dan and me could be confused about, is it really the same color or are we just seeing the same color? So that's also one of the points to consider, that as an, we might be interpreting, and physiologically we might be interpreting it right, but psychologically it's just set into our brain at this point that, okay, maybe the colors are not the same and it's actually different and you're seeing it to be the same. Yeah, there was one question on the chat about does, say, converting images to black and white help? I would say it definitely, visualizing images in grayscale as an intermediate step helps, as in it's not going to, basically, there's no point trying to bring everyone down to a lower interpretable state where no one's going to be able to represent a lot of data in the same figure. So visualizing the figure in grayscale definitely helps to identify if you have enough variation in hue, for example, which will, irrespective of, let's say, whether the reader is colorblind or not, it might help them distinguish between two colors. Also, as in, it also helps you identify if you need to provide more, say, tools to help distinguish different subsets of the data than just the color. So using patterns or using textures or using point shapes or something like that. Dan, did you want to add something to?
Yeah, I think I had answered that in the Google Doc version of it already, just by saying that I think it can be helpful, but I think it sort of levels the playing field, but going all the way to black and white can be maybe a bit extreme, because there are ways, and I think it's making your data accessible to a lot of people is something that I do think is important, but I think we do need to balance that with still allowing people to fit information into plots, fit as much information as we try to currently into plots. I think that maybe we just need to find a color panel or some sort of suggestions that just help make things better. But that particular suggestion going all the way to black and white, I think is, in my opinion, it's more extreme than we necessarily need to do in all cases.
Atul and Dan, we have 2 more minutes until the end of this session. Perhaps you would like to wrap up or make any suggestions or comments. So 2 minutes to do this. Thanks.
Sure. As in, I guess in terms of if anyone wants to bring up more points in terms of, say, accessibility of figures and visualizations that we have not covered in this session, please feel free to connect with us or add to the Google document. I wonder if there's an anonymous way of doing that if you're impacted by, say, the current visualization trends or standards, and you feel that they are not as accessible, or there are accessibility or interpretability needs that need to be addressed. Please feel free to add to the Google Doc or contact me, or I guess even Dan. I'm kind of volunteering you for that without asking you. But yeah, I think this is still very much a work in its as in initial stages, and there's a lot to be done here, figuring out where at which stage this should be addressed, or who the right person to address these things would be. And currently it's just two individuals giving their points of view, and we need to figure out a way where it is more inclusive, where everyone's concerns are heard and addressed in a way. So this is definitely something that will take a while, but if you have any particular suggestions, or if you have any particular concerns, now is the time to hop onto the bandwagon, and we will all get there.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the Google Doc myself for a while after this. I can definitely be on board.
I noticed Mike Smith is on the call as well. He might have actually some really good ideas. I'm going to post the Google Doc also on the Slack channel, Diverse BioC.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a better Slack channel. Maybe you want to create a Slack channel. I don't know. But for the moment, I'll post it on Diverse BioC. So it's also available to people there. And it's also in the chat for this session.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
All right.
Yep.
And if people want to continue this, there can be a subsequent meeting that can be during the meeting. If you want.
Okay.
How would we arrange that, or
would you want to arrange that after, say, Ditto Seek time tomorrow or something like that? Would that be preferable to you?
Yeah, so for only 3 or 4 people, you can arrange yourself on the platform, or for meetings with more people, we ask Erica for her help.
Okay.
So perhaps we can, I can put you in touch with her via email. I get in touch with you right after this session, and then I let you know how. Yeah.
And the chat for this talk would still be available after the fact, right? So we can post on the chat here as well as in the Google Docs that such a thing is happening.
I don't think so, but we have, so we transferred, I would say, major questions from the chat to the Google Doc, and we also copied so useful links from the chat into the Google Doc. So
okay,
it is more or less a good summary, yes. And this session has been recorded, or is still being recorded. So I think we have a good record of what has been discussed, yes.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thanks everyone for listening, and yeah, feel free to contact us. I was also hoping that as in if you had any figures, and my lab kind of does that, and anyone in my lab, if they want to see how accessible their figures are, they would just send it to me and ask me if the colors that were chosen were right or not. And I usually help them with the right choice of colors, or tell them which ones are more confusing and which ones are not. So
I try to do this too. I'll say that if everyone is coming to us at once, we might take a while, but I'm definitely down for that.
As in, if people wanted to just post their, and I could have a section in the document where you just post your figures. We could have before of that figure, kind of, as in.
Yeah, that could be a good example. We could make a Slack channel for this.
Right. And if let's say a white paper or something comes out of it, as in and your figure is used in that.
I'm wondering if there's any way
yeah.
to automate
Sorry?
this. I'm wondering if there's any way to automate this, to like create a package where you upload a figure and it tells you whether the colors are accessible, and if not, to like which groups. Right? It should be, I'm thinking this shouldn't be that hard, right? But I don't know. I think that'd be really cool.
Very psycho-visual is what I would say.
I would love to chat more about that.
Cool.
Sure.
Let's organize another meeting here on this. We will organize a meeting during the conference for sure. It's a hot topic. Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.